Hey, it's Nate from Navigator Bookkeeping, and I wanted to create a video on 1099s for private practices. 1099s have kind of that aura about them where we know they're important, but we're not always sure exactly what they are and what we need to do with them. So, just going to give you a little bit of a touch base on 1099s, and just note that none of this is advice from your CPA or from an attorney. So, if you need specific questions, reach out to one of them, or if you're a client, happy to chat about this in a monthly call as well. But yeah, it's not legal advice. Disclaimer, there you go. But anyways, hopefully this is super helpful from a private practice perspective. So if you're a private practice owner, pretty likely that you may be having some 1099 workers. 1099 is just another term for contractors. Now you may have 1099s as therapists, but you may also just have them as, maybe a VA who works with your company. Maybe it's a bookkeeper, or you maybe even need to send a 1099 to your accountant, your lawyer, things like that. So let's start with who needs 1099s, okay? So first of all, these are not for employees, right? Employees we call W-2 status. They're paid through payroll. Payroll taxes are withheld. 1099s are for contractors only who are not paid. They may still be paid through your payroll software, but they're not paid payroll taxes. They're not withheld. They're not an employee with your business. They're someone who's coming in, doing some work more independently. Now, we could get into the whole conversation of who's a W-2 employee, who's a 1099 contractor. That's a little bit of a longer conversation. And that's something you should think about and check in on with people in your business. If they're regularly doing work for you in a specific way, it's worthwhile to consider that conversation as far as are they a 1099 contractor or a W-2 employee. But to get back to kind of who needs a 1099, it's anyone who's a contractor who you paid more than $600 to in the year. But then it also comes down to their status, okay? So you need to send them a W-9, usually at the beginning of the year or when you start working with them. And what this W-9 is going to do, just a form, they're going to put their business name, they're going to put their entity type, and that's really the important information here. They're also going to put their address, so you can send them a 1099 if you need to. But that W-9 is going to tell you what type of entity are they. Because if there's certain types of entities, like an S Corp or a C Corp, they actually don't need a 1099 at all. But if there are other sorts of entities, like maybe they're just an individual, or maybe they have an LLC that's just taxed as a sole proprietorship or a partnership, then they will need a 1099. So that W-9 form is super helpful, and that's something you want to be sending throughout the year to anyone that's working with you who is not an employee. You're going to send that W-9 to them. They're going to fill it out. They probably already have one they can just send back to you. And then you'll have that information. You can kind of figure out, okay, who do I need to send a 1099 to? So let's say you send out all those W-9s. You get them from all your vendors, everybody you work with who's providing some sort of service to you. You're then going to go through those and figure out anyone that is either an individual or is an LLC, taxed as a sole proprietor or partnership. They have not checked the S Corp box. They have not checked the C Corp box. Those people, if you paid them over $600, probably will need a 1099. Now, there's one other kind of oddity here, is if you've worked with an attorney, even if they are an S Corp or a C Corp, they still need a 1099. For some reason unknown to me, probably could look up why this is, or I don't know, maybe there's not even a reason, but the IRS requires 1099s for all attorneys. So even if your attorney is an S Corp or a C Corp, you still need to send them a 1099. And let's get into what is on a 1099. Basically, all it is it's telling the IRS and telling the individual you're sending it to how much money you paid them in the year for services. So let's say you worked with us, Navigator Bookkeeping. We provided bookkeeping services. We charged you for those bookkeeping services. The 1099 you're sending to us, and it's saying, I paid Navigator Bookkeeping XYZ amount of money. And this is going to go to the IRS, and it's going to go to us as well. And it's basically a way of double checking that the money that I'm reporting to the IRS matches up with the money that you're saying you paid me. So it's basically a double check, not for you as the employer as much, or as the company as much for the vendor to double check they are showing their revenue correctly. So that's kind of the purpose of the 1099. They need to be sent in January, before January 31st, and you obviously can't really begin sending them till the year ends. So this is kind of a January task. So if you are seeing this video now, it's a good time to kick this into gear, get this done in January, get those W-9s from all of your vendors. If you're wondering who did I pay this year, a great way to go to that, to find that, is to go to your profit and loss, look through your expenses, figure out all those vendors, especially in categories like legal and professional services. If you have a contractors category, obviously that's a go-to. But even like, let's say advertising, if you had a marketing firm that did some marketing work for you, that's a great one to check out. Like I mentioned, the legal and professional services, so your CPA, your attorney, your bookkeeper, those are great ones to be thinking about. And then obviously VAs, contractors. If you are a private practice and you have clinicians who are contractors, that's obviously a very easy one. Definitely going to need to send them a 1099 because you probably definitely paid them over $600 in the year. So it's a little bit of a process, but the process is the easiest if you start it early, get those W-9s going right away, get them from all of your vendors, and then start going through the boxes on those W-9s and figuring out who do we need to send a 1099 to. As far as sending the 1099 itself, there's a couple ways you can do that. If you're using a payroll software like a QuickBooks Payroll or a Gusto, for example, they can send 1099s for you. So they'll send 1099s to anyone who was in their system. So if you've paid clinicians through Gusto who are contractors, those 1099s will be all ready to go. It's super easy, great process. There may be people in there though, or who are not in Gusto who you still paid and need to send a 1099 to. Oftentimes, you can then manually set up those payments in Gusto. So they're not going to get paid again through Gusto, but you're going to show those payments in there, and then they can send a 1099 for you. It's usually going to be an additional cost. Outside of that, there's many additional platforms or websites you can use to send 1099s. Basically, you'll just manually enter in the company name, their address, their email address, the amount you paid, all that good stuff, and then they will send the 1099 for you, usually for a charge. Most accounting firms will do this for you as well. Obviously, it's an additional service. So if you have not thought about this at all, uh, reach out to your accounting firm that you work with or bookkeeping firms. Some bookkeeping firms may also do this, and ask them, hey, can you file 1099s for me? And they may have a process for this. But just know that they do get very busy in January, so the sooner you reach out, the better. Like I said, these need to be sent by January 31st, so it's good to get started on this right away. So hopefully that's a helpful primer. I know there's a lot more information here that I didn't cover, but hopefully it's a helpful piece to at least start grasping what are 1099s, what do I need to do with these, especially as a private practice owner. And if you are a private practice owner, the last thing I'll say is the big things to think about are clinicians who are contractors, legal and professional services, and then advertising services. If you get those done, you're probably covering most of your contractors, but it's a good idea to look around and see if there's any other ones in there that may make sense. Oh, the final thing that I'll mention that I didn't mention before is if you paid those vendors who are 1099 eligible through a credit card or through a processing site like a Stripe or a PayPal, oftentimes you will not need to do a 1099 for those because there's going to be a whole separate file that's created for that. So like if you paid people through Stripe, for example, Stripe will probably create a 1099 for you. But it's good to check in on that as well. But anyways, if you paid through credit card, you're usually not going to need to send a 1099 for that person. If you paid them through check or through ACH withdrawal, then you will need to do a 1099. I missed that earlier, so make sure you catch that piece. Very important as well. All right, well, if you have more questions, feel free to reach out. Happy to consult with you and help you on this if that would be a helpful piece. And happy 1099 season. See you later.